Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Tim Wu. I'm a documentary director, and I'm working on a film called Kings of Karagos. It's about two Syrian Kurdish football prodigies who are stuck in a refugee camp in Iraq. To keep up with all of my adventures, you can hop on Instagram and look for Tim Wu Baby. Yeah, man, I think it's changed a little bit in recent years. Like soccer has picked up in popularity in the States. Still not to the point of like basketball or football, but definitely compared to when I was growing up, it's a lot more popular. I think a lot of it comes from my dad. Like he was big into playing soccer for whatever reason when he was in Taiwan. And then he kind of passed that on to me. Like I remember being maybe like 3 or 4 years old and him taking me out into our backyard and showing me how to kick a ball around, showing me a few moves that I can still pull on the pitch today. So yeah, like I've always just loved it, and I think I was a pretty decent player as a little kid, and it always just stuck with me.
Well, so do you plan on going to a World Cup, or have you been to a World Cup?
No, I mean, I've wanted to multiple times, but I haven't. I've been to a bunch of matches in Europe, though, and I've loved each time I've been able to watch like club matches. I think just the atmosphere of it. I mean, I'm sure like Europe, whether
Yeah,
you like you're in the middle of it, so you get to experience that,
yeah,
on a basis. For the people who aren't trying to be at home and have a quiet evening at night, like it's awesome. Like just like the whole, like wild, like festival, like passionate atmosphere of it. I think, yeah, just the atmosphere. It's like never mind the game. Just the atmosphere itself, like, is enough for me to be excited about it.
absolutely, man. Well, it sounds like we need to go to. I need to meet you in Abu Dhabi, man, for the next
Yeah,
World
yeah,
Cup, right?
yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. In Qatar, that'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, you're right. Qatar. What? Wait, is that next year?
Yeah, so it's 2022, and usually World Cups are in the summer, but because it's in the Middle East and it's really hot, it's going to be in the winter at the tail end of 2022.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do that, but it's never really been in a city that I've kind of that I've wanted to go to. So, but
Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
do
that'd be wild.
yeah, do you follow the qualifying matches as well, though? So like the people who qualify for the
Yeah,
World Cup.
yeah, I do. I mean, I think that's probably the most patriotic that I get as an American is my support of the U.S. men's national team. Because yeah, like I think about growing up as a kid, like playing soccer in the United States, and how like everyone on that team, like it's not exactly the same situation because they're playing a much higher level, but you know what I mean. Like there's
I
still
do.
like
I
that
do.
that connection, that
Yeah.
support.
Well,
Um,
mhm.
yeah,
Well, I wonder why they don't do as well as the women's team. I mean, it's hard because the women's team is winning,
yeah,
so that's like the pinnacle.
yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out why the men's team struggles so much.
I think like in general, it's the level of competition around the world. I mean, um, like in the other countries, those kids like they're so driven and they're playing and training so much at such a young age. Like even so, for example, like even right now, with the documentary that I'm doing, which involves two young footballers who are stuck in refugee camp. The youngest kid is 11 years old now, and because I'm a friend of his, I'm a friend of his family. It's like he's super talented, but like I'm concerned because like he's not training right now with a professional club because he's stuck in a refugee camp. So even at 11 years old, like you're nearing the cutoff at which you need to be like practicing and training at a high level like every single day if you realistically want to become a professional, and not even not even an international player, a player who's playing for a national team, but just to have a shot at being a professional. And well, he wants to play in Europe. Um, So even to have a shot at playing professionally in Europe, like you need to be, like playing with a club team, because like that's what all the other kids who have those aspirations. That's what all the kids who have that aspiration are doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it's just
why?
the level of competition.
Yeah, yeah. So why'd you choose this as a documentary subject?
I mean, we'd spoken just then about my interest in. I'd said that part of it comes from my dad, so there's a deep connection, and like I think there's also an element of there's a deeper emotion and an element of love involved with soccer, like familial love, and in addition to watching a lot of soccer, I'm also a soccer journalism junkie. Like I'll check, there's like 4 or 5 websites that I'll check, 7 or 8 times every single day just to see if there's any updates about it. And in being a football junkie, I come across a lot of interesting stories about the narratives behind football. Like it's never just a match. There's always stories behind it. And I think especially some of the journalism that is delved into football in places or situations of hardship, I found to be really interesting. So I wanted to do a documentary. I was looking for a while for a documentary subject about football in place. Sorry, I'm going to switch between like football and soccer. Like usually I say football. So I was looking for a while in the area of football in places of hardship. So I had looked at, I had a friend who was putting me in touch with the Afghan professional, like I think they call it the Premier League. I had looked into a semi-professional team comprised mostly of refugees in Italy. And then as it so happened, when I was in Shanghai, I was speaking with a friend who had just volunteered at the refugee camp in Kurdistan region, Iraq, that I'm filming at. And then she was like, there's this gentleman who used to be a professional coach in Syria. He's now a refugee and he was working with some of the kids in his camp. And I was like, oh man, like that's really interesting. I'd love to know more. And that's how my documentary kicked off.
Yeah. Well, the subject matter is fantastic. And some of the people that you sound like you're filming and interacting with, it sounds like you have some pretty tough moments. And when I say tough, I mean, someone who is being in a refugee camp has got to be one of those low moments in a person's life. Like how are you dealing with those emotional, I guess, highs and lows?
Yeah, so especially for the subject of the documentary, my friends who've been in this refugee camp, like they went there thinking it was going to be a 3 or 4 month stay, and they've been there for 8 years now. So, just the psychological aspect of it is really difficult because in terms of the physical conditions, things have certainly improved. When we think of refugee camp, we usually think of like a sea of tents, but they've actually built cinder block buildings. There's small shops. There's like shisha cafes. So in terms of the physical, it's the refugee camp that I'm filming at, because it's been around for so long, the conditions are a bit better than other camps, but still there's that psychological difficulty of being stuck in a place that you don't want to be and not having any idea when you're going to be able to go home or when you would be able to immigrate elsewhere. And it was difficult, especially because I'm friends with all of my subjects. So it's difficult when they tell me about their stories and when I see their struggles trying to get out and how they're just stuck in that situation. Yeah.
Well, what's the prep work like to get ready for a documentary?
There's a lot of research, and in the case of this documentary, there's a lot of legwork that needed to be done to get access. So in terms of research, broadly speaking, I think there's two aspects of it. One is you're looking for a narrative. And what I mean by that is we have all of these events that happen in our lives. And I'm taking this out of the documentary context for a second, and just like broadly speaking, there's all of these events that happen in our lives, like every moment of our life, an event. And the way that we give these events meaning, the way that we connect these events and then view them, is how we create narratives, right? So for example, there could be a narrative in your life about, the cars that you've owned. Right. There could be something, like an easy one, like your professional narrative, right? Or like your romantic narrative. So part of the research is looking at the moments that I've seen and know of in my subjects' lives, and then finding that line of connection that we could use to create a narrative. So that's one part of research, is like the personal narrative. And the other part is the social impact. So with these potential narratives, what are the connections to bigger stories that reflect social issues? Because for me, part of the reason why I do documentary is I want to do films that matter, right? Like I started out wanting to do just straight up like what we think of as movies, right? Like narrative fiction. But as I thought about it, all of the movies that I wanted to do, they're all what I would consider films that matter, right? So ones that left a deep impression on me. For example, Philadelphia, like it's an old movie with Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington. Right. Philadelphia, like that left a deep impression on me. The one, I can't remember the name of it. The one where Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto, they're like this, they're selling like pharmaceuticals. I can't remember the name of it. But like the point is, yeah.
What is that? The Dallas Club?
Yes, the Dallas Buyers. Yes, that one. So yeah, like films like that, like those are the films that I wanted to do when I was thinking about doing narrative fiction. And then I was like, wait a second, like, why don't I do documentary then? I mean, that was one of the reasons why I chose documentary. But yeah, to do films that matter. So it's important to find that social impact. Yeah. Okay.
So is it fun while you're doing it, right? Like I know it's work, but is it part fun as well?
Yeah, I mean, like talk about work and fun. Man, I'd rather do documentary than any other type of work. Okay. I've been in the corporate world. I mean, I started out as a software engineer at Microsoft. I didn't looking at code all day, especially like 22 years old back then. So like after a year, I was like, screw this, I'm out. I think also the purposefulness of it, that I believe in what I do, and I think it's contributing to humanity. I think that's also a big deal. Like it might not strictly fall under the category of fun, but it gives me enjoyment. It gives me joy to do this type of work. And that's something that I've found for me is specific to doing documentary, as opposed to the corporate work that I've done before.
Absolutely. Well, you recommended to me, man, to watch Honeyland, and I'm halfway through it.
Oh,
and I'm enjoying it. But from a technical aspect, right? Like the color dynamic that they have, like what kind of camera do you think that they use? I mean, it's very, the as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Yeah. So I'm trying to get a hold of like what type of camera and sound system that they use, just from a technical aspect.
I can't say overall what camera they used, but for some scenes, the ones that are inside, where the woman is speaking with her mother inside of their small little building, and it's lit just by candlelight.
Right.
So for those scenes, they would have to use a camera that performs very well in low light. As an example of what they might have used for something like that, if they're on a tight budget, is the Sony A7S.
Really?
That's something that, yeah, like that's a camera that I personally purchased just for the low light conditions in my documentary. But otherwise, yeah, I'm not sure what else they would have used. I think a camera with what's called a global shutter as opposed to a rolling shutter. Like, I'm thinking of some of the scenes where they're handheld and they're following her, and the picture doesn't seem to like turn to jello and be uncomfortable. So probably global shutter as opposed to rolling. But other than that, I can't tell just by looking at that.
Yeah, I get. But I guess the reason why I asked that question is because a lot of the Google searches or YouTube searches are related to how to get like such a cinematic look, right?
Yeah.
And I know some of the digital cameras are kind of getting there, but they aren't quite there yet. And so a lot of you're doing it in post production, but that looks, man, I love the color dynamic in that movie.
Yeah, like the cinematography on that is awesome. As far as getting the cinematic look, this quote unquote cinematic look goes, I think, if you have a competent DP, it almost doesn't matter what camera you're using at this point. I mean, you could go out easily, not easily, but you could go out with an iPhone if you know what you're doing and end up with something that looks like what people would consider cinematic. And actually, to be honest, like getting the cinematic look, like it's not really a concern for me.
Yeah.
What I try and do as a DP is just the best job possible, and then whatever that turns out to be.
Yeah. Well, I know you're doing stuff on your own, kind of like a freelancer.
Yeah.
What are the challenges of being a freelancer, like, not just filmmaker, but also someone who does documentaries?
Yeah. I think my situation is kind of different because for the most part, I had been working in Shanghai. And yeah, China is a completely different landscape than outside of China. And also because I had been doing branded content for a while, which is quite different from the type of documentary that I'm trying to do now. Like, the business model is completely different. So for example, when I'm doing branded content, I have a client, they gave me a brief, there's a budget, I do the work, I give them the film, and then I get paid. Or I might get paid upfront, like it's a deposit. But with what I'm trying to do now is completely different because I need to fundraise, make the movie, put it into film festivals, get distribution for it. Maybe I'll have to do some of the marketing myself, and then I'll get paid. So I think, especially because this is my first feature documentary project, this is a lot more difficult from a business point of view than the client work that I've done in the past.
Yeah. Well, on this particular project you're working on right now, in post, what are you gonna do? You have markers? Like, do you have stuff say, okay, well, I think that this was great footage and this wasn't so great footage? Or are you just going to review it all and then kind of cut it up and then make your documentary?
Yeah, so because I'm the director and the DP, so I'm kind of editing it even as I shoot. Like, especially because I'm shooting for what's called continuity, so that when I cut the film, it should feel like what we would think of as a movie. So I'm shooting for continuity, and that puts a lot of the editing work in the shooting itself. So I like working this way because I feel it's, to use an analogy from music, like it's a little bit like improvisation, like jazz. So a lot of the decisions on a movie that would usually be made between a director and a DP in a long-ish meeting, I'm doing on the fly in microseconds when I decide, okay, what's the angle, what's the lens length. I'm doing that as these things are happening, as these scenes are happening right in front of me. So a lot of the editing is going on, and I'm thinking about this as I'm shooting. And after I'm done, go through all the footage and put it all together. But because I've shot for continuity, because there's only one camera angle, the editing is actually a lot faster than what a lot of other documentaries might look like in process. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it seems like at this point in your career, you've learned a lot. And I know with filming and things that you do, you continue to learn. But what percentage would you say is things you've learned on your own? And what percentage would you say were things that you've learned in school?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, one wouldn't happen, to be honest, like one wouldn't happen really without the other. I feel like to have the fundamentals and to have some exposure and be able to observe someone who's really good at their craft, really good DP work, it gives me a basis for then going out and learning on my own. I think percentage wise, I mean, maybe about, I'd say it's somewhere between like 30-70, learn in school and learn like through practice, somewhere between 30-70 and like 50-50.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me where you think you've improved the most. I know you probably remember way back when you first started kind of like playing around with a camera. Tell me where you think you've improved the most.
I think it's my ability to shoot verite documentary. It's like this specific type of documentary, this specific way of working. Like I mentioned it a little bit before about it being like jazz and shooting continuity on the fly. So that's a very specific type of cinematography because, I don't have even 5 or 10 minutes to set up the shots. They're happening right in front of me. I need to grab them, but I need to grab them in a way that makes sense cinematography wise, and also where I can cut it for continuity in post. And also I'm doing it with one camera. So just as an example, if I were shooting our conversation, there's a lot of choices that need to be made, right? Like with one camera angle, I could choose to shoot what's called a master shot, where you can see the two of us. It's probably like medium, and we're speaking with. You can tell that we're speaking with each other. Another way of shooting it would be an over the shoulder. And then at some point in the conversation, I'll move to a master, and then I might move to like an over the shoulder of the other person. Or I might just stay on an over the shoulder for both of us and just catch your reaction when I'm talking. So these are all considerations that need to be made on the fly. And there's also, well, like, how do I compose the picture so that it looks nice? And I think that's what I've learned the most, and that's where I've improved the most. And I think it's only through practice, because it's a very specific type of filming, and there's not many resources on like how to do it aside from just going out there and getting a feel for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know we talked about this before, now we got to kind of talk about budgets and dollars. So when you're shooting, are you shooting, or scratch that. So your creativity, right? Like, is part of your creativity kind of influenced by where you want to get this film? Like, you want to get it into film festivals, you maybe want to get it on streaming platforms. How does that come into play when you're in your creative process?
I'm definitely thinking about creating a marketable film. Like, I'm not just creating art for art's sake. Like, I do want it to do well on the film festival circuit. I do want it to sell. So yeah, I think that influences some of my creative decisions. Yeah.
Well, for someone like myself, or anybody really that has never done a documentary, what kind of suggestions or recommendations do you have? What kind of advice do you have someone who's thinking about, well, first, let's go even further back than that. Someone who thinks that they want to be a DP or a filmmaker, like, what kind of things would you suggest to them to do? Like, do you suggest going to school? Even though we've already established you don't have to go to school, you know, would you recommend at least taking some type of community college work, right? And then from there, kind of like, what do you recommend someone do?
Yeah. So I would recommend going to school, but I wouldn't recommend going into all that debt.
Okay.
So, you know, if you have, you know, 500,000, you know, whatever it is, not 500,000, probably like $200,000 sitting around that you want to just spend on what you like to do, you know, go ahead, go to school. But it's a lot of debt to come out with. And especially starting out, I think it's really, really difficult to pay that back. But you have to learn. I think, you know, there's a lot of resources out there now if you want to learn about cinematography, although you have to be careful of certain biases that are kind of out there in the, you know, YouTube or trying to figure it out yourself role. And not to knock what you just said, but I think this obsession with shooting cinematically is one of them if you're trying to learn how to be a DP. And I think, yeah, it's just important to learn the fundamentals, and then if you have the grasp and if you're able to execute on those, you'll come out with a decent looking film. But yeah, like there's also quite a few, especially with cinematography, there's quite a few books out there that'll fill you in on the fundamentals. One of them, I think, is called like The 5 C's of Cinematography. Like, it's a really, really old book, but it's quite solid, especially if you're looking to do narrative film. Which brings me to another point, is that directing and doing cinematography, like they're, especially nowadays, like it's super, like those are super broad fields. And depending on what you want to shoot, what you'll want to learn is also a little bit different. So for example, like if you're not looking to do narrative work, like if you're trying to do, I don't know, like social media content that just looks cool, or ads that just look cool, that's one thing. And there'll be a lot about cinematography, maybe not the technical stuff, but about storytelling that you just don't, to be honest, like you just don't need to know. Yeah. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with directing also. So to turn that into like an action point, I think it's important to figure out, or at least explore, and then figure out what it is that you want to do within directing, what it is that you want to do within cinematography, and then that'll inform the way that you go about learning it and pursuing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get in the time machine, man. You said you used to work at Microsoft.
Yeah.
How did you get to work? Kind of like take me on that linear progression. Like, how did you get from Microsoft to being a filmmaker?
It was a pretty long road, and it went through many different areas. So I started off at Microsoft, but every day I would look out the window of my office and then wonder what else was out there? What was beyond the horizon? At that time, I was 22 years old. I hadn't seen a whole lot of what was outside my window, and I wanted to see more. At that point, I knew that I was interested in Mandarin, Chinese language, Chinese culture, and the place, and also that the economy would, like everyone knows this now, but that the economy was going to be booming there. So I quit my job. I went to Shanghai and I studied Chinese. And in doing that, I met an intern at the music TV channel in Shanghai. And he was like, hey, do you want to try hosting a TV show? Because he knew that I was really into music, hip hop in particular. And then that was kind of my foot in the door with like entertainment stuff in China. So I started hosting TV shows on the music channel in Shanghai. And after that, I was like, I want to be a rapper. So yeah.
That's always the next step, man. That's always the next step.
Drop a mixtape. So my path to B or C list superstardom went through a pop idol search that I participated in China. And with that pop idol search, there's also like this like reality show component where like all the contestants were living together. So that was also really critical in my China experience, because I got to spend an entire summer with other Chinese young people who really love music, just living together and like participating on a TV show. So that was pretty wild. After that, eventually I put together an album, and I had a 3-album deal with a major label, but we had a contract dispute and falling out. And then I was like, I don't want to do this.
Not to interrupt you, but what was your rap name?
Just Tim Wu.
Okay, all right.
That's really cool. That's already cool enough in another language.
Well, it's cool. Yeah, you're right. It's cool in English, I think.
Yeah. So, but yeah, by that time I was approaching my 30s, and then as I thought about it, I was like, I don't want to be like 30 or 40 years old and still doing rap. No knock on 30 or 40-year-old rappers, but like for me personally, it's just like not where I like envision my life. And also because I was also like producing at the time. So I was like taking in a lot of hip hop and a lot of rap. And, not all of it is like this, but I found that it really influenced the way that I was thinking about money, about women, about the way that I wanted to approach life. And it wasn't, and it was pretty negative. It was not the person who I wanted to be. Like, I understand, some of those things and beliefs are cool, whatever, but like, it's not the person that I want to be. And again, like that's not with all of rap. It's certainly not with all of hip hop, but just what I was listening to in particular, some of the stuff that was popular at the time. And no, I'm not going to say what I was listening to. But no, like, I mean, honestly, you think about it and like you read some of the lyrics and like, really, like, is this what you want to be putting into your mind, like all the time, like throughout the day? Especially because like I was listening to it so much. And in the end, I was like, like I need to take a break from this stuff. So I took about 2 months to just digest all of that had happened throughout those years of like being a C-list rap star in China. I went to a lake, and every day I would just like stare at the water, and I wouldn't like talk to anyone either, like to the point where other guests in the guest house thought I was like mute or something. They thought I could talk. Yeah. I would talk, just sit there, like look at the water. And then eventually I realized that I still wanted to, and at that time, like, it was a big decision for me because, like, either I could choose something that was more stable and guarantee of better pay, or I could continue to do like a creative and risky pursuit. So it was tough to decide that I wanted to do film, but like when I thought about it, I believe that this is what I was best suited to do, because before this, I'd shot a couple music videos directed a couple music videos for myself and also some friends. So that put me on the path of doing film. And I started out wanting to do movies, narrative fiction. But yeah, like I realized that there are a few obstacles. Like one is just the amount of money that you need to raise to make a film. Like it's beyond what I have in my bank account, and I'm willing to burn. And also my ability as a writer was just not at the level that I would want it to be at. And I realized that in order to get to that level, like it would take so many years of work. And I didn't think I had that time left. But at the time I was also working I had worked at a creative agency that had me directing short documentaries. Mm-hmm. So when I thought about it, I was like, you know what, I was pretty decent at that. And I'm pretty decent at taking the real world, what happens in real life, and then forming that into a narrative. So that's what put me on the road of doing documentaries. Yeah.
Do you miss the rap game at all in China?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I miss the pay because when I was doing it, there wasn't much of a market for it. Rap in general, and the shows that I was doing for a couple $100, kids nowadays are doing for like tens of thousands, if not $100,000. Yeah. So in that sense, I miss it, but yeah, like I think it's a young man's game, and I'm not trying to stay in the mindset of a young person forever. I feel like what I wanted to do with rap, like I've done, and like I've since moved on. Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I mean, I still listen to. I mean, you might feel the same way, but like I don't really listen to a whole lot of new rap, but like there's still albums that I'll go back to again and again that I think are just tremendous works of art. Like Illmatic. Only Built for Cuban Links. Those are two of my favorites and just ones that I could listen to again and again.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, I agree with you. Like rap has moved into a new, to use your word, scene. But I understand and kind of know that a lot of that is because of who's involved as far as money is concerned, right? Like you're going to make, even though people don't think they don't have a boss when they're in the game, when you get on that record label, the record label is pretty much your boss. Like they pretty much tell you what to do. Sure. And so based on that, I kind of understand that. And I also understand that. So with the Migos and Drake, he's in and out of that lane as well. And Future, those kind of things, it's really beat driven. So I have a tendency to the Cardi B's, like, right. I ignore the words. It's just it's kind of beat for me. So, and I recognize that you can have a very successful pop tune that comes out of that will like I will listen to in my car, but as far as like putting it on rotation or listening to it in my house, no way. Yeah. No way. So absolutely, I definitely understand what you're saying. Yeah. Could you have turned it into a management? Going back to the rap thing, could you have turned it into some type of management? Could you have been a manager or actually started your own label?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was hoping to do. But I think that's kind of what tripped me up. Is because I didn't just want to do rap. Like I wanted to start a label. And in retrospect, as an artist, I think especially in China, like that's not the best way of trying to go about it. It's really difficult to represent yourself. And also, like at the time, there just weren't any agents out there who really knew how to push hip hop. So I wouldn't even be able to, even if I had the budget, like I wouldn't be able to hire someone to do that. But yeah, like the scene has changed. Like it's viable now. Like there's labels who are doing well. But back then, to answer your question, yeah, back then that's what I wanted to do, but I wasn't able to do it. Also because of personal shortcoming. Like I'm not a good salesperson. Like it's just not me. Like it's something that I'd like to work on. I think especially nowadays, regardless of what your medium is, as a creative person, as an artist, like you need to be able to promote yourself. So that's something that I'd like to be able to learn to do better. But back then, yeah, I was certainly terrible at it, and that's also that also contributed to me not being able to really get my label off the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you do a compare and contrast, rap music there and then rap music in America,
yeah,
the lyrics are talking about the same thing. Like what are the things that are similar and then what are the things that are different?
I mean, so obviously the scope of what the lyrics are is a lot more narrow in China. I think image-wise, aesthetically, yeah, there's probably some similarities, like, you know, the way that people dress and the way that they act in music videos. Yeah, so those are similarities. That's one similarity, and that's one difference. But to be honest, like I don't pay like a whole lot of attention. It's just because I still have friends who work in the industry, so I have a little bit of exposure to it through the social media stuff that they post. But like I haven't listened to, aside from like clicking a few seconds on my friend's post, like I haven't listened to Chinese rap pretty much since I stopped doing it, and that's been like 10 years. But yeah.
Well, is there anything you would do differently? Like if you could go back in a time machine, is there anything you would do differently?
Yeah, certainly. So I would have been more open to like getting representation earlier instead of trying to build my label. I think I wouldn't have tried to negotiate so hard when it came to contracts. Let's see what else. And I mean, like creative wise, like I would have, I think I would have maybe tried to use beats that were a little bit more jazzy as opposed to like more popish. Because back then, like I was thinking about, okay, so, and this isn't the situation now, but back then, like hip hop was like a pretty foreign thing in China. So like when it came to beat selection, I was like, okay, like I'm going to use stuff that's more, and I'm going to really date myself here. I'm going to use stuff that's more Neptunes-ish, right? Because their production was like more pop, and I thought that would be like more accessible. But what actually turned out, and this is back then, this isn't now, what actually turned out is people were more receptive to like a jazzier style of hip hop, somewhat influenced by what some Japanese artists in jazzy hip hop had been doing. Now it's completely different. That's not what I would do now, but back then that's something that I would have done different, like the beat selection. What else? I think I probably, to be honest, like I would have gotten out earlier. Like I really, really wanted to at least drop one album. So like that took up at least 2 or 3 years of my life, but it didn't get the returns. It didn't get the result that I'd wanted. I think if I had put that down earlier and then gone to film school earlier, or at least studied film earlier, that would have been beneficial. Yeah.
Your cinematic style, like your approach and how you
Yeah.
see things, have you found that yet? Have you found your voice yet?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard to verbalize because it's something that's visual. But when I show people my work, when I show people my work, they're sensitive to what I'm doing. And they can feel that there's a particular visual style to it. Yeah. And also, I think for every film, like what you want to try and do is like give the film its own, like what's called like visual language or cinematic language. And on the film that I'm working on, Kings of Cargos, yeah, definitely there's a cinematic language to it. Yeah.
So your legacy, what do you want that to be when it's all said and done?
I think it would be for this film. I'd like it to bless everybody involved. And that includes the subjects like the families, and also myself as the documentary director. I think ultimately it would be for God to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
Absolutely. And so, Matt, how did you get to be such a reflective person and kind of be aware of your surroundings? Because I find it to be very, I don't want to say unique, but it's very seldom that I run across other people who, because I feel like I'm that way as well. Like,
yeah,
being conscientious of how I treat people and the footprint that I leave on the world, not just carbon footprint, but just my friendliness and openness towards people. How did you get to that place where you are now?
I think part of it comes with age.
You would think that that's what comes with age, man, but I know a lot of
maybe
people.
it does. All right. I don't know. I mean, I think bring it back to film. Like two of the things that left the deepest impression on me when I was going to taking film school classes, actually had nothing to do with like the technical aspect itself. Like one of them was when I was taking an advanced cinematography course, and the instructor told us about how he never points the camera down on people because we don't look down on humanity, right? And I was like, oh shoot, like that's really interesting, like within the context of how I think about using a camera and how I view people. And another was when I was taking a method acting class, and then we were partnering up for that day, and then to get comfortable with our acting partners, we would look each other like directly in the eyes for like 5 minutes. And then after, the laughing and after the awkwardness, we would observe, and then we would tell the class what we saw. And, in sharing our thoughts about the exercise, most people say stuff like, Tim has a cool mustache, or, so-and-so has like bushy eyebrows. But what I said, and this is probably the pinnacle of my academic career, what I said was, I see Phil's humanity. And I think it's important that we're able to do that in every single person, because we're all created in the image of God, and we all have that infinite value. So at times it can be difficult, right? For example, like if you see, speaking of looking down, like if we're looking down and we see like a beggar on the street, like they're dirty, they're smelly, they might have like mental problems. Like it's difficult, to be honest, like to see that common humanity. But I think that's really, really important. And that's also something that I try and do in my film work. Like we talk a lot nowadays about representation and seeing people who look like me on on the screen. And I think that's important. I think that's very important, that people aren't discriminated against, and that people know and that there's equal opportunity, and that people know that as an Asian person, I can be a superhero too. Like, that is important. But I think as important is being able to see someone who doesn't look like you, and to be able to empathize, and to be able to see that we share a common humanity.